It was named Shakespeare. Linda, just a moment. Yes, stop here.
Yeah.
I would like to say, my dear professor from here, I could never forget the date of Shakespeare birth and date. And William Shakespeare, okay, let's start my presentation. William Shakespeare was an English poet, a playwright, and actor, born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon. His birthday is most commonly celebrated on 23 April, which is also believed to be the date he died in 1616. Shakespeare was a prolific writer during the Elizabethan and Jacobean age of British theatre. Shakespeare's plays are perhaps his most enduring legacy, but they are not all the road. Shakespeare's poems also remain popular to this day. Next page, Linda, please.
Yeah.
Yes, I will talk about briefly his work. Shakespeare produced most of his known work between 1589 and 1613. His early plays were mainly comedies and histories, and these works remain regarded as some of the best work produced in these genres. He then wrote mainly tragedies until about 1608, including Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth, considered some of the finest works in the English language. In his last phase, he wrote tragic comedies, also known as romances, as collaborated with other playwrights. Shakespeare's plays remain highly popular today and are constantly studied, performed, and reinterpreted in diverse cultural and political contexts throughout the world. Yes, Linda, could you?
Yeah.
The next page.
Yes, it takes a little bit time.
Yes. Why is William Shakespeare so important? Shakespeare is probably the most famous playwright in the world, having 37 plays and 154 sonnets. Not only did Shakespeare teach us about ourselves and humanity, but he also invented around 1,700 words, which we still use in everyday English today. We have a question for you. Linda, please going on.
Yeah. So here, I want to ask my very first question. Sorry. Nowadays, how people should try to understand him and his works? My question is for you, Kalyani, please.
Okay. Shakespeare is, can I share my screen as well?
Yeah, you can share your screen. Sorry, let me stop my sharing. I think you can share now. Let me.
I have disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, yeah.
You can make me co-host, then I can share.
Yeah, I did it.
Right. Well, I got a presentation here where I have said a lot of things. I will use my presentation to reply to your question.
Yeah, sure.
It was Ben Jonson who said Shakespeare was not of an age, but of all time, but for all time. It is very true, because when you look at Shakespeare's works, you see that there are so many things that are universal, whether you're in Turkey or in India, whether you live in the 21st century or 16th century, there is something that connects us. Nelson Mandela, who said, Shakespeare always seems to have something to say to us. Our first language is not English. Many of us may not have experienced English culture directly. But when Shakespeare depicts characters and situations, when he talks to us, you feel like there is something that connects with our life. So there is something universal. That is one thing that we should understand. Secondly, there is a lot of politics behind Shakespeare's writing, behind our life also. When Shakespeare writes, he's writing about politics, he's writing about gender, he's writing about culture, he's writing about history. So the understanding of any writer, including Shakespeare, is understanding him from our context as well as his context. We have to understand his situations, his age, as well as interpret whatever he has written to pertain to our age. In other words, reading Shakespeare, who is such a really awesome writer, such a deep writer, such a universal writer, will give us perspectives on our life and situations. When I was invited to talk at your meeting, I was fascinated by the connection between Istanbul and Shakespeare, and also me from India. Shakespeare wrote at a time when modern civilization was beginning. He lived at a time when medieval elements of culture still existed. People had so many superstitions, relationships, and society were not fully developed completely yet. Life was very difficult. But from that situation, when he was writing, he was giving us a world view. He was giving us a perception of human nature that has still become relevant to us. Even today, it still remains relevant. And Istanbul or Turkey, where you are organizing this program from, was in the throes of a lot of historical upheavals from then onwards till the 20th century, as we know from world history. And when we talk about Shakespeare in India, when we talk about English literature in India, one sure thing that we always talk about is the fall of Constantinople and how it began modern history. Even though it must have been really traumatic for the people of Turkey, for centuries there were wars and upheavals in your country. I'm so fascinated by how your country was the breeding ground of this modernity that we benefit from. Today, in India or in any country in the world, we reap the benefits of modernity. We enjoy the benefits of modernity, which means a new perception of human beings, a new understanding of life and history, a new tolerance and sharing and questioning. You know, I'm again so fascinated that when I asked Linda whether I can speak for half an hour, Linda said, no, let it be questions. We'll be answering the questions. That is a sign of modernity. We have to question. We have to stop speaking and we have to start questioning. That is also a sign of modernity. There are so many ways in which Shakespearean plays teach us to question, teach us to undo our, erase our existing knowledges and think in new ways. Revamp our relationships, have a new connection with history. So, read Shakespeare today, I have to stand in 16th century as well as today. I have to stand in England as well as Turkey or India and say that Shakespeare is a perennial writer. Shakespeare is always relevant to all of us. If you want, we can look at examples from Shakespearean plays. And do you want me to do that?
Yeah, sure.
Take some random examples and show you how
Sure.
Situations in Shakespeare. Would you like that? I have some examples here.
Sure, please.
For example, Shakespeare's universalization of experience, how Shakespeare universalizes experience. I've taken some examples from Shakespearean plays here. The most famous play of Shakespeare is, of course, Hamlet. We have to start from Hamlet. Hamlet is a play that is entirely about identity. Who am I? What is a human being? And what are the of a human being, the desires of a human being? How do you fulfill these desires and what are the consequences? This is what the play is about. Look at the sentence of the play that is spoken. Who's there? That is the first sentence in the play. And it gives me goosebumps to think how in the 16th century, Shakespeare said this sentence that goes deep inside me. You know, who am I? Who is there is about a human being. It is about the identity of a human being. And how with that one master stroke of a sentence, you know, it is so subtle. You don't notice it. But with that master stroke of a sentence, he just sent his
We're still asking ourselves the question, actually.
Pardon me?
We're still asking that question to ourselves nowadays too.
that one sentence that he said at the beginning of the play is pointing not only at the center of the play, but our concerns. It's still our question, our central question or concern that is raised in the play. And everybody knows this famous statement that Hamlet makes in his monologue: what a piece of work is man. Is there any century or any country or any experience or any culture that does not talk about this? It is so universal. All that we are doing today also, why we are talking about Shakespeare. What a piece of work is Shakespeare. That is what we're saying here. And the dilemmas of Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. It is the dilemma of life and death, whether he should live on, whether he should commit suicide. There is no human being in the world ever who has not confronted this question of life and death. Why am I living? When am I going to die? And what am I going to achieve in life? Things like that. To take another example, Othello. This is a completely different thing I've taken from Othello. Can I do this, or do you want me to stop now? And
please continue. We have time. We have arranged that Zoom was arranged like after 40 minutes. It's completely collapses and not gives you opportunity to talk.
Right.
But okay, now we have opportunity. You can continue, please.
Yeah, I will take a couple more examples to reveal different sides of Shakespearean discourse. Othello, you know, killed Desdemona because of Iago's machinations. And Othello completely misunderstood Desdemona. He did not understand how pure she is and how good she is. And because of his own inner insecurities, he was a Moor, he was a black man. Again, Othello is like an in-between. That is very relevant for a country like Turkey, because Turkey is also a country that is in between the West and the East. And Othello brings that juxtaposition of the West and the East so beautifully. And Othello, being a black man living in Europe, he has insecurities. He has the inner fear that his pretty white wife would leave him, probably, that he's probably not good enough. So playing upon these insecurities, Iago makes him misunderstand his wife, and eventually, and look at the final speech that Othello gives. He does not say, I'm sorry for what I've done. Oh my God, what I've done. What have I done? I've killed my wife. He is not able to confront it. He is not a perfect husband or a perfect man. He is flawed. He is divided inside. That division is what you see in his final speech. I pray you in your letters, when you shall these unlucky deeds relate, speak of me as I am. What is I am? I am his flawed man that he is. No human being is perfect. We are all flawed. We are all divided. We are all fragmented inside. That is the universal truth that is revealed so subtly in Othello's plays. When Shakespeare wrote, he was writing to aristocrats, to very learned people, to uneducated people, to working class people, to children, to adults, to women, to men. There was a whole world that he was addressing in his plays. To everybody, it makes sense. Sometimes his speeches are so subtle because only the philosophers and the great learned people need to understand. The others will understand in their level. Children will understand it in their level. Philosophers will understand it in their level. Like that, there are so many layers to Shakespeare's writing. And when you go deep into it, you'll be amazed at how many times you can read Shakespeare and get new meanings in every reading, probably. The more mature you become, the more mature your reading also becomes.
Dear,
yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I wonder some information about what's your opinion. How did gender roles impact Shakespeare's plays, especially female characters? Like Desdemona, as you know, Shakespeare lived in England, especially during the Elizabethan age. Female characters are considered as an abomination. How can we say? Especially for gender.
Yeah. Can I use my PowerPoint and reply? Because I've come to the part. It was first, before I talk about gender, we have to realize one thing. Shakespeare talked about human beings. That is what Ben Jonson means when he says, Shakespeare has no heroes. His scenes are occupied only by men who act and speak as the reader thinks that he should himself have spoken or acted on the same occasion. Shakespeare's plays are not about heroes and villains, they are about people. That is the meaning of this quote. And based on that, it was John Ruskin in the 19th century who said, Shakespeare has no heroes, only heroines. Well, to understand Shakespeare's perception of gender, we have to understand that Shakespeare never gave one perception of anything in his plays. He let his characters who are very feminist-like characters. There are also characters in Shakespeare, women who are very submissive and, they are victims of patriarchy. So what exactly does Shakespeare think about women is not clear, because Shakespeare was a playwright who just let his characters speak for themselves. Later on, in another occasion, I can tell you more about it if you want. That is called negative capability of Shakespeare. He did not push his ideas, put his ideas into characters. But
he would like to create outstanding female characters. I understand.
Yeah. So what is Shakespeare's idea? We don't know, but about Shakespeare's comedies and tragedies, John Ruskin said the women are more dominant in the comedies. About Shakespeare's comedies, John Ruskin said Shakespeare has no heroes, only heroines. In the because there are so many women who are virtuous in the comedies, Sylvia in Two Gentlemen of Verona, or Rosalind in As You Like It, or Portia in The Merchant of Venice. They are very powerful women who teach the men a lesson, who control the men, who bring the play, the plot to a situation where they want it to be. They are so important in the comedies. In the tragedies, it looks like the men are dominating. Othello is killing Desdemona, Hamlet is rejecting Ophelia, and things like that. But, even Julius Caesar is not paying attention to Calpurnia. The women seem to be on the receiving end. They seem to be victims. But dramatologically speaking, when you speak in terms of dramatology or narratology, you will understand that the power of the male characters in Shakespeare's plays are dependent on the women. They're balancing the characters, the male characters. Without the women, the men are not going to be so effective. Macbeth. There is no Macbeth without Lady Macbeth. And it is the sacrifice of Ophelia, the silence of Desdemona that makes Othello or Hamlet those tragic heroes. So I think Shakespeare in his life actually left his wife. He did not go back to Anne Hathaway after he went to London. And looking at his sonnets, we have every reason to believe that he had so many love affairs, and with men as well as women, perhaps, we don't know. That is what the sonnets seem like. In life, we don't know if Shakespeare respected his wife, or anyway, he bequeathed his second best bed to his wife. That is all we know. What he gave her is a bed when he died in his will. But it looks like from the plays, Shakespeare has a very balanced view of gender, because he has represented both sides. And that again takes us back to the argument that in Shakespeare, there are no heroes and villains, only people as they are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. What other question would you like to ask me?
Our students would like to ask to you a few questions. Mehmet, Asa, if you get ready, you can start.
Hello, my name is Mehmet, and I would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Why is Shakespeare more popular now than 400 years ago? Because he was born 400 or 500 years ago, but he's more popular now. What is the reason of that? Yeah,
there are two reasons I would suggest for this. One, Shakespeare's popularity was not less before. It was changing. Shakespeare pertained to in certain periods. Shakespeare was always a cult figure, very important, because there was a Shakespeare cult in the 18th century, for example. Shakespeare's view of popular culture, the importance that Shakespeare gave to ordinary people and their experiences, etc. And the Shakespeare's importance given to nationalism, etc., made Shakespeare popular in the 18th century. There is so much in Shakespeare that every age can find something important, to cling to in Shakespeare. So in the 18th century, he was important for those reasons. In the 19th century Romantic period, also Shakespeare was important. Shakespearean enactments, etc., happened in the 19th century also. And in the 19th century, Shakespeare was important for romantic reasons, because Shakespeare is an anti-classical romantic playwright. In the 20th and 21st century, I think why Shakespeare is important and why this webinar is, or this meeting is happening, is because of something called Shakespeare industry. It was the Frankfurt School in Germany who talked about culture industry. And culture industry means we make commodities out of culture. We want to sell things in culture. We want to use things in culture like commodities. This is applied to Shakespeare also. Shakespeare, when you go to England, to Stratford-upon-Avon, you would definitely want to visit Shakespeare's birthplace. You have to buy tickets there, and when you reach that place, you will see a whole sea of people swimming there in the roads, entering the shops, buying lots of curios. Just being there in Stratford-upon-Avon is a huge experience. So
Stratford-upon-Avon, such an experience to be there.
Industry.
It's such an experience to be there.
Yeah, our Oxford symposium gave us the opportunity to do all these things and buy and experience Shakespeare and other literary figures in the form of mugs and bags and books and all that. So Shakespeare is very convenient today because he is appealing to everybody, and Shakespeare is a very saleable commodity, in the form of lectures or books or adaptations. All of us might have watched so many movie adaptations of Shakespeare. The movie adaptations of Shakespeare are selling Shakespeare in another way. I will show you some pictures from the movie adaptations. I have them here. The most important figures in Shakespeare adaptations are Laurence Olivier and Kenneth Branagh. Laurence Olivier's Hamlet I have put here from 1948, and Kenneth Branagh's 1995 Iago I have put here. Shakespeare is as popular in the East as well as in the West. In the East, famous adaptations are Akira Kurosawa's Macbeth or Throne of Blood, and King Lear or Ran. Ran is based on King Lear. This is from Japan, obviously. In America, it started with Orson Welles, who played Falstaff in Chimes at Midnight. It's a classic. And then after that, in Britain, there is Peter Brook, who made an absurdist production of King Lear with Paul Scofield as Lear. You must have seen this American comedy from 1999, probably, 10 Things I Hate About You. It's not a classic or anything, but it is based on The Taming of the Shrew. Here in India, we have many, many adaptations of Shakespeare, the most famous being Makbul, which is a version of Macbeth. In your Turkey, last year, there was Shakespeare Festival, and I have taken the picture from the internet of this famous actor as King Lear. And in all these ways, we are actually consuming Shakespeare, selling Shakespeare. I'm saying in a positive way also, not negative actually, but that is how our culture is. So Shakespeare is important because of the market, because of the marketability. And this makes him dear to us. It endears him to us. It is like our Shakespeare. If there is one thing that brings all of us together, it could be Shakespeare, because everybody loves Shakespeare, knows something about Shakespeare. And when there is I thought, who is going to listen to this lecture on Shakespeare? Why would they want to listen to Shakespeare of all people? He's so old, I thought. But then I knew when it is Shakespeare, everybody will automatically want to listen to it because it's our Shakespeare. That is why I think Shakespeare is popular now.
Okay, thank you.
For your answering, dear Kalyani. Our students are very excited to ask students for you. The other student, the next student, who is he or she? Ata, are you? Yeah, Ata, could you ask to your question
Hi.
for Kalyani?
I have one question for you. Actually, I haven't read any Shakespeare book, so I want, but I don't know which book I should start. So my question is, which Shakespeare book should I read first?
A very good question. Shakespeare has written very light comedies in his early career about friendship, about love, about powerful women. The early comedies are interesting in that sense. The later comedies that he has written are more mature. There is more intellectual wit and there are more fully developed characters in the later comedies. And then there are the dark plays, which are the dark comedies or the tragedies or the Roman plays. There are also the English histories. They are more philosophical, they are more tragic, more deep, more difficult to understand. Then there are the last plays, which are the romances. The romances are tragic comedies. They are about shipwrecks and family reunion and with a lot of philosophical elements in them also. The most popular play in the world is obviously Hamlet. But I don't know if you are a first reader of Shakespeare. If you're reading for the first time, if you should read with Hamlet, I don't know. I would suggest you start with a lighter play. The second most famous play in the world must be The Tempest. It is also a readable play, but it is a little about history and race and gender issues also. And there's a lot of spectacle in it, supernatural elements, and it's very dramatic. If you like that kind of plays, it's interesting. Tempest is interesting. But if you just want a light-hearted, fun play, then you can read some of the earlier plays like As You Like It, or Twelfth Night, or The Taming of the Shrew, or The Merchant of Venice. Probably The Merchant of Venice, probably you can start with, because you must already know a little bit about it and it will be easier to read because of that. Shakespeare is a difficult writer for many readers because he wrote in the 16th century style. Not only the language, but also the style of looking, the way he looked at things is not contemporary. So many people regard Shakespeare as not an easy text to read, as Shakespeare's works. But still, once you get to read and start getting used to his style, he's a brilliant writer to read. He's amazing. There are so many things you will love about Shakespeare. So I would suggest start with The Merchant of Venice.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question. I'm just going to continue. Sorry.
I'm answering every question a little elaborately so that we can cover everything
Yeah,
in the
sure.
questions. Is that okay?
That's really fine.
Okay.
And if Yusuf Safa is here, we can have his question.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Kalyani. William Shakespeare was initially making works related to comedy and history, and these works were recognized. In your opinion, why he suddenly headed to type of tragedy?
The answer has been given by critics. Shakespeare in his youth was happy-go-lucky and he probably didn't have many problems. He engaged in love relationships also, presumably. But towards the middle of his life, critics and biographers have said that Shakespeare underwent a lot of traumas in his personal life, all of which is not clear to us. But in relationships, he became more rich, he became wealthier, and problems related to that also could have happened. There are indications of all this in the sonnets. So as he grew mature and as he began to learn from life and suffer some troubles in life, it is believed that he turned into dark comedies and romance and tragedies. But after that, he came out of that also. At the end of his life, he became more benevolent, more friendly and happy and forgiving. All his last romances are about forgiveness and reunion, and it shows a lot of mature perception on life. It was Edward Dowden, a 19th century theorist, critic who said that Shakespeare's career can be divided into four. The titles he gave to the four parts of the career will explain your question. The first part is the first period in his career is called in the workshop. So at that time, Shakespeare was just learning to write and experimenting in the workshop. The second period is called in the world. In that period, he was actually immersed in the world and enjoying his life in London as a playwright and actor. The third period is called out of the depths. So he is becoming deeper in his perception, in his experiences, and he is writing out of the depths in the third period, which is the period of tragedies. But he came out of that. And the fourth period is called in the heights. He became more mature. His perception became transcendental, and he started writing in that manner at the end. So I think it is autobiographical why he changed from comedies to tragedies and then to tragicomedy.
Okay, we have one more question.
Yeah.
Oops. It takes a little bit time when I change the... Sorry.
Arda, I see you. Yeah.
Yeah, here we have another question from one of our students. Arda, if you're here.
Yeah, I'm here, teacher.
Yeah, you can ask your question.
Hello, dear teacher. I have one question for you. In this place, which emotion is more important when we examine generally, and what does he actually want us to feel?
Did you say which play is more important?
No.
The emotion.
I say in this place, which emotion is more important when we examine generally, what does he actually want us to feel?
Which emotion is important in his plays and what does he want us to feel, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. There are so many emotions in Shakespearean plays, obviously. But if you ask me what is one emotion, again, the emotions in tragedies are different from the emotions in comedies and histories. But one emotion, if I can call it an emotion in all his plays, is philanthropy. I don't know if that is an emotion, but this love of humanity in all kinds, in all ways, that is what he tried to convey through his plays, I would say. And also he was catering to all kinds of people. So, you know, it was a whole world that he was showing, a variety. Like Shakespeare's character, Barber said about Cleopatra, infinite variety, you know, age cannot wither her, nor custom stale her infinite variety. That is what Barber said about Cleopatra in Antony and Cleopatra. Like that, variety is the word for Shakespeare, infinite variety. Shakespeare cannot be reduced to one emotion or one perception at all. But if you want me to say one perception, that is philanthropy, love of humanity of all, in all ways, of all kinds. And I suppose he wants us to feel the same. That is the Renaissance spirit. He lived in the Renaissance period. The Renaissance spirit of loving all variety of experiences and all kinds of people is there in Shakespeare. That is what he wants us to feel.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you so much. And there are so many good questions in the chat too. But first of all, I want to share our questions. Then if we have time, we can analyze the questions in the chat too.
Yeah. Certainly, certainly.
So here is one of my questions. In Shakespeare's work, we still see the same problems that we have today. Do you think that it's a coincidence? Like, as if Shakespeare can see the future and he's experiencing those things at that time, and now we're still experiencing the same thing in nowadays, and like, what's happening? Like, is it time travel or something? Like,
well, I have been talking about Shakespeare as if he's a terrible genius who knew everything and who did everything cleverly, perfectly. I've been talking about him like that. But in reality, I am talking from the glamorous, glorious image that Shakespeare has got in later times. When he lived at that time, probably it was indeed a coincidence that he happened to talk about things that are still relevant. But it is also a sign of his genius. It is a sign of his genius that he could see things in human experience that are universally relevant. I should also say that everything that we know about Shakespeare or Shakespeare's plays is not true. Shakespeare did not publish any of his plays at that time, only a very few of his plays, that too without his supervision. So it was the later editors who added passages and edited passages, removed passages. The editors have a major role in making Shakespearean plays what they are now. It is not just one man's doing. It is a whole tradition of Shakespeare that we have behind us. So either the man Shakespeare or all the editors or everybody together created plays in such a way that they contained universal experience. And this is a very reassuring thing for us today, that all the troubles and problems we have today are not our own. We are part of a larger humanity. For centuries, we have been living the same kind of lives and having the same kind of problems in different ways, even though culture has changed so tremendously from Shakespeare's time to ours. So that is what I've been saying from the beginning, that universality of Shakespearean plays, which is probably not because of his own doing, but also because of editors and interpreters and critics, etc. later. But nevertheless, Shakespeare has a universality that still appeals to us. It could be some bit of it is coincidence, some part of it, but it is not entirely coincidence. That is why we are talking about Shakespeare at all.
Thank you so much. And here, Elif teacher, your question you can have.
Yeah.
No, you actually.
I asked the question in the teacher, and
Okay.
I have a question. What inspired Shakespeare to become writer, dear Kalyani? What inspired Shakespeare to become writer?
Yeah. Again, I am telling you, we do not know everything clearly about Shakespeare's life, but Shakespeare was a very clever businessman. That is what many recent 20th century critics and interpreters and adaptations have all told us. Shakespeare was very clever and he knew what would sell. What would sell in the Renaissance period is experience. People were hungry for experience, other people's experience. People were hungry for history. And Shakespeare was not a very highly educated man. He had just gone to grammar school, whereas there were many writers at that time who were highly educated, the university wits like Marlowe. These people were writing very high level plays that ordinary people could not understand completely. Their language was very classical and rhetorical and very high. And they did not get the popularity like Shakespeare did also. So Shakespeare must have seen a market in selling human experience, writing it in more simple and interesting and accessible ways, so that not only the high educated people, but also the ordinary masses who had one penny to give and be groundlings in the Globe Theatre, they would also come and watch the plays. So Shakespeare got inspired to be a writer probably because he was a good businessman, because he knew what to sell. And it so happened that in those days, you did not have to be original. You did not have to have all that knowledge that you would require today to be a writer. Shakespeare lived at a time when people were plagiarizing or copying from other texts, freely imitating other writers. So it was easy for Shakespeare, even though he didn't have education that much, he was learning as he wrote. That is why in the workshop, in the early plays, he is learning and he perfected his art. So Shakespeare would not really have thought of himself as a great writer who would be talked about in the 21st century. He was a man who was, all the playwrights at that time were like that. There were men who were selling their products and making money out of it. It was a very competitive world, a dog-eat-dog world. And Shakespeare would have been shocked to know that we are still talking about him and thinking that he's such a great genius, perhaps.
Dear Kalyani, as far as I know, and his beginning plays used to several Chaucer's poems.
I didn't understand the last part of your statement.
Yeah, he used to some Chaucer's poems, as maybe we can say that in Troilus and Cressida, as you see that some stanza or some lines, Chaucer's poems, including that books. Maybe did he admire Chaucer? No.
We have no proof to whether he admired Chaucer. He definitely drew from Ovid. He definitely drew from, because Chaucer was not as easily available as it is to us today. In the Renaissance period, more classical people were, the classical writers were popular in England, and Ovid and the other writers like Belforest, William Painter, Cinthio, so many writers who are sources of Shakespeare. Definitely he must have known through other works. He may not have read all these books, but he must have come to know about these writers from other works. About Shakespeare's relationship with Chaucer, I don't know if we have any evidence at all. But definitely Shakespeare composed poetry. But his proper sonnets came only in the time when the theatre was closed in 1590s due to the plague. At first, he made money as a playwright only. And definitely he was writing poetry at that time, because those plays are in verse. The early plays are all, except the comedies, the histories are all in verse. And he wrote sonnets and long poems only when the theaters were closed due to the plague. And at this time, I don't think he made money out of the sonnets or long poems. The stage or the drama was his source of income. And whether he enjoyed writing for reasons other than money making, I'm not sure. We don't have that much evidence either.
Thank you for your answering.
Okay, so
Linda, I have my questions.
I have one more question.
Before the question, Linda, I would like to say something.
Yeah, sure.
The complete works of Shakespeare was translated for the first time into an Indian language in the 1990s. That was into my language, Malayalam. And I worked in that project of translating the complete works of Shakespeare for 5 years as the assistant to the chief editor. And I had the good fortune to go through all the plays and all the important things in the plays several times, which gave me the good fortune to understand Shakespeare very deeply also. I just wanted to share that joy. Okay, the next question.
Thank you. So my last question is this. So what do you suggest our students, they're high school students, about how to study Shakespearean works, like first learning about history or just directly analyze the works? And the level is also very important, because they're high school students and they're not, literature students in university. So what do you suggest? How should they start? What they should do?
At every level, when you study a text, you should know a little bit of the background, the context of the writer, the society in which he lived. And these days, because of the internet, it is very easy to get information on the background. You can watch YouTube videos or read online. It is very easy, because knowing the background only will help us to understand and enjoy the text. Without knowing the background, you will only see the techniques and the language. You won't see the life in the text. So I would always suggest you should know a little bit of background, and then you could also read up on the text before you read the text, if you want it like that. That is, I would like that, to know the text before I read it. I would read up on the text, and then read the text. Of course, you have to read the text. Read the text and look at the interpretations if you have time. If possible, again, if you have time, reread the text, because in one reading you can't understand great classics like Shakespeare. And then definitely you should also watch adaptations, etc., to see other people's interpretations. This kind of interactive learning through various media That is what is expected of all students in the world at this time. High school students can do it in the way they can. I don't underestimate high school students. They are more advanced in technology and comprehension than us. I am kind of disadvantaged being older than a high school student, I think. I would always have remained a high school student if I could. So high school students are very highly advanced people. They will be able to understand with their own research a lot of things. So do your own research, explore the text and the context in your own way, and understand it as deeply as you can. Enjoy it, read it and enjoy it, fall in love with it. That is very important. When you read first, if you don't fall in love with it, that is because you have not read enough. That is because you don't know enough. You can't help falling in love with classics like Shakespeare. You have to do it.
So we have like 10 minutes left right now. I'm so thankful that you answered all of our questions. Now there are so many questions in chat. I just want to
Just pick and choose a few.
Yeah, I just want to choose one of them. I also want to ask this question to you. It was about Marlowe, this one. Many believe that it was Marlowe who was actually writing and not Shakespeare. By the way, Christopher Marlowe is my love. I'm so sorry to say in the Shakespeare Day, but he is my love. And also, some believe that perhaps Shakespeare's sister was writing. Authorship is an issue with Shakespeare. Do you agree, ma'am? They're asking. So what do you think about Marlowe and Shakespeare?
Yeah, it is not only Marlowe, there is a whole long list of people who are suggested as the original authors of Shakespearean plays. That was only till the beginning of the 20th century that people thought that it could not have been Shakespeare, but Francis Bacon or Christopher Marlowe or other people who wrote Shakespearean plays. But in the later 20th century, a lot of critics have asserted that there was definitely Shakespeare, the person who lived and the author who wrote. And today, I think that authorship controversy is a little outdated. We don't believe that anybody else wrote Shakespeare's plays at all. But Shakespeare is a huge cult. He's like a hyper product, not only the plays and the adaptations and the books and seminars and all that, but even these gossip and rumor and stories and who is a dark lady, all that is part of the discourse of Shakespeare. It is so fascinating. It's like we create stories out of about superstars, etc. The more popular and the more celebrity a person becomes, the more stories will be told about that person. Like that, these stories are the peripheral elements of the Shakespeare discourse. So today, rather than think about is Shakespeare the real author or did somebody else write Shakespeare's plays, we should be thinking about why are there so many stories about Shakespeare? What is the politics behind it? What is the intention behind it? How is Shakespeare becoming more popular and appealing because of such stories? It is fascinating to read upon people's obsession with the idea that Shakespearean plays were written by Francis Bacon, for example. There was one Delia Bacon who went mad trying to argue this. She went and sat near the tomb and she would not get up and go. She was mad, I think, making this argument. So it is fascinating, but personally, I don't think anybody else wrote Shakespeare's plays. I love Marlowe too, but Shakespeare, like Ben Jonson said, I admire Marlowe and Ben Jonson and other people. Like Dryden said, I admire Marlowe, but I love Shakespeare.
Okay, so
Dear Kalyani, Linda, yeah.
Yes, Elif teacher, I just wanted to say we want to thank you.
Few sentences. Dear Kalyani, thank you very much. It was a very impressive seminar. I hope we will meet again on another seminar. It was very impressive. Nice to meet you. Thank you for participation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you all. This was a great opportunity for me too.
We learned a lot of something from you.
Thank you.
So thank you all for participating. We have our time limit. Thank you so much. for participating in our seminar. Wish you all healthy days. Keep safe and have a good day. Hope we do this seminar thing again and again, because I have really enjoyed to being here. I hope you
I would love to
too.
talk about more authors than Shakespeare, not only
Sure,
Shakespeare.
sure. I will definitely want to do that too. It was super exciting at the beginning. Right now, I feel like a little bit relieved, and I'm so happy about this. And I have questions in the chat too. I'm going to save them, and I'm going to send it to you as you wish. Like you want, if you want to answer them, because there are so many good questions, but unfortunately, we don't have time to answer them.
No problem. I will answer the questions and post them in Facebook or something.
Okay, I'm saving the chat right now. So thank you all. See you again. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.